Miles Platting has always been one of Manchester's most talked about districts, a place shaped by mills, working class history and a reputation that's never quite gone away. But in 2025, what's the truth? Is it still the rough neighbourhood people describe, or has the area changed more than outsiders realise? Today we're taking a real look at Miles Platting, its streets, its past and the reputation that still follows it. Miles Platting is one of Manchester's oldest working class districts, known for its long rows of Victorian terraced houses and the towering mills that once powered the city's growth. For generations, this was a true manufacturing neighbourhood, filled with factory workers, tight-knit streets and a strong sense of community. But when the industry collapsed, Miles Platting was hit hard. Poverty increased, properties were left emptied, and a reputation for crime began to take hold. Even today, many people outside the area still picture Miles Platting as it was decades ago, as if the neighbourhood never moved on. So as we go and take a look at some of the estates around here, just on the right of the screen there, an old abandoned house has now been knocked down. Now this estate here looks to sit in the shadow of one of the many tower blocks you'll find around the area. Let's have a look at some of the housing. Now this particular estate was the location of one of Miles Platting's most tragic incidents, where a 15-year-old boy sadly lost his life in a stabbing. We will cover that particular scene after checking out the tower block. Strong smell of weed right here. As you can see, the tower blocks aren't hard to miss, and the reason you'll see so many of these around here is due to Miles Platting industrial decline in the mid-20th century. The area soon became slums, leading Manchester City Council to demolish the old housing and build modern high-density council estates in the 1960s and 1970s, featuring these multi-storey blocks alongside lower-rise homes to rehouse the working population and address urban blight. We will take a closer look at these throughout the video. CCTV is often standard for these blocks. And so just coming out to the other side of the houses, we have this huge building that looks to be under construction at the moment, sat facing a kids park and more houses. Taking a closer look, the entire wall is boarded up. But something is being developed here. This whole wall is looking a bit knackered. However, right next door is this smashed up building. Might be due to be knocked down at some point. You can see the windows smashed in there. And right next door to that is the Shaftesbury Chapel with iron bars and barbed wire on the roof. And as you can see there, this whole section is boarded up. And another look at some of the houses. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one of the most shocking incidents in recent years here in Miles Platting happened in June 2022 on Bednall Avenue, which we're walking to now, where a 15-year-old boy was killed in a stabbing during a domestic incident. Greater Manchester Police were called to a house in the area at around 9:30 p.m, where they found the teenager and his mother had both been attacked. The boy was treated at the scene and taken to hospital, but sadly died from his injuries about an hour later, while his mother survived and was treated for serious wounds. Police launched a murder investigation and later arrested a 44-year-old man in Kent on suspicion of murder. The man was charged with the murder of the teenager and the attempted murder of his mother, and was later sentenced to a lengthy prison term. So as you can see here, looking at the estate now, the house in which the incident occurred looks to be the third house down here. Although incidents like this understandably have a big impact on how people perceive an area, but it's important to remember that this was a specific individual incident in a private home and not a reflection of everyday life across the whole neighbourhood. So as we come out of the estate now, we have the huge Corpus Christi Roman Catholic Church here on the corner. Now, the church is a Grade 2 listed building and was built between 1906 and 1907 by architect Ernest Gunson. However, in 2007 it was closed due to high maintenance costs and its declining congregation. And right next door is the Usmania Banqueting Hall, or Usmana, if I'm saying that right. Although the banqueting hall is looking a bit worn down. There you can see the estate right behind the church, and if we turn the camera around, we have this huge section of new builds. You'll notice a lot of these around the area now. And just before we carry on further, let's take a look at some of the notable serious crimes that have happened within the area. Gang feud murder. A long-running feud between rival Manchester crime gangs ended in the fatal shooting of Kieran McGrath outside a pub. The investigation revealed the use of tracking device placed on his car, with links traced back to individuals connected to Miles Platting. Notable criminal histories. The area has produced some well-known career criminals over the years, including individuals involved in persistent theft and shoplifting, with at least one later speaking publicly about leaving crime behind and help as others do the same. Unsolved serious crimes. Some major cases linked to the wider area, including the 2008 killing of Claire Brown, where she was strangled in her own home, remain unsolved and are still reviewed by Greater Manchester Police as part of an ongoing cold case investigation. Weapons and police seizures. In April 2023, targeted police patrols responding to rising concerns led to the arrest of 2 masked men and the seizure of serious weapons, including a machete and a large combat-style knife, in the Miles Platting and Ancoats area. Moving further on now, we'll take a closer look into these tower blocks. And as mentioned earlier, you'll see these blocks from almost every angle in Miles Platting, not because they were always here, but because they were part of a major attempt to tackle post-industrial decline and provide affordable homes by building upwards. By the mid-20th century, the area had been heavily industrial, and as factories closed and old terraces declined, local authorities looked to provide modern high-density housing. Instead of rebuilding on the same ground as low-rise streets, planners in the 1960s and 1970s opted for multi-storey tower blocks as a quick way to replace slum housing and cope with demand for council homes. Today, Miles Platting contains just under 2,000 housing units, including around 12 multi-storey council tower blocks, part of the estates managed on behalf of Manchester City Council. These includes blocks such as Queensberry Court, which we'll take a look at later on in the video, and others that were built as part of the wider public housing strategy in East Manchester. This push towards high-rise living was typical across many British cities during that period. Big estates were seen as modern, efficient, and a way to replace outdated housing stock. In more recent years, many of these towers have been part of regeneration programs, refurbished, connected to community services, and brought up to newer standards as part of long-term housing projects. So as you can see, just at the base of Gunson Court, I'll try to show you what I can of the inside briefly. And it pretty much looks as you'd expect. And right across the road from these flats are a set of new builds. Another look at some more of the blocks for you, and further down the road is a whole line of new builds. As with all these towers, CCTV is clearly on display for each block. So just before we move on, let's check out some of these houses opposite the way. We have a Hong Kong tea van here. And of course the sofa fridge combo for sitting out in your front garden. And as we just pan around some of the houses, we have this home here with a barbed wire covered garage roof. Again, you can see the towers dominate the skyline. Just cutting down some of the narrow walkways that link up between the houses here. And off in the distance there you can see the iconic Victoria Mill, a symbol of the Industrial Revolution here in Miles Platting, so we may as well go take a look at there now. So as we arrive at the Victoria Mill, this is the Rochdale Canal that runs alongside. You can see some of the city skyline over in the distance. And as we move along, I'll tell you why the mill is such an important landmark around here. But first, just crossing over the canal, we have plenty of graffiti on show, and just behind the wall is a smashed up building. Says it's under new management on the sign. Looks like they have a lot of work to do with the place. And right opposite is again more new builds. And so as we go by this gang of ducks, I'll tell you about the mill itself. The mill is a massive former cotton spinning mill that dominates the skyline along Lower Vickers Street, and it was built in 2 stages in 1869 and 1873. It was designed by the architect George Woodhouse for William Holland and Sons, and became a major part of Manchester's booming cotton industry during the 19th century, helping power the city's global reputation as a centre of textile manufacture. Victoria Mill was constructed as a 6-storey double mill with an engine house and distinctive chimney. Typical of the large industrial factories of the Victorian era, it sat beside the Rochdale Canal, making it easy to transport raw materials and finished cloth throughout the region. A real example of Manchester's cottonpolis past. The mill employed hundreds of local workers and contributed to the area's growth and importance during the Industrial Revolution. The mill continued operating until the 1960s, after which it stood empty and fell into partial dereliction for many years. Its size and prominence meant it became one of the most recognisable historic buildings in Miles Platting, but also a reminder of how much the local economy had changed as manufacturing declined. Here you can see the canal right next to the mill, perfect for transportation. Right opposite is this huge new green space, which is part of the broader Miles Platting regeneration scheme, which has been ongoing since the mid-2000s. This space is ideal for dog walkers, runners, kids parks, etc. It also features the Victoria Mill Community Centre. And there you can see again the mill itself. We'll go round to the other side and take a closer look at the entrance. It does look a bit like Willy Wonka's factory from here. But as for the rest of the history of the mill, in the late 20th and early 21st century, the mill was given a new lease on life. As part of a wider regeneration in East Manchester, the former textile factory was restored and converted into modern apartments, office space and community facilities, adapting its historic fabric for contemporary use. Architects and developers have worked to preserve key features like the red brick exterior and cast iron columns, while making it functional for residents and businesses today. The building now houses residential units, healthcare offices, adult education spaces and other facilities, blending the area's industrial heritage with 21st century life. Today, Victoria Mill stands as both a symbol of Miles Platting's industrial past and a sign of ongoing change in the neighbourhood, one of the few surviving reminders of how vital this area once was to Manchester's economic heart. So here's a closer look at the front doors nowadays. And of course the iconic main chimney coming out of the mill. So crossing back over the water, we have the Queensberry Court flat blocks mentioned earlier on in the video, managed on behalf of Manchester City Council. And right underneath is this community garden next to a school. And spinning the camera around, you have the backdrop of the mill. And so we'll go take a closer look at the tower. Plenty of cameras watching us, watching them. The Queensberry Court sign is posted up on the side of the building, along with another camera. A quick look inside for you. Again, it's as you'd expect. And right across the road is again more new builds. And just in the distance there, you can see the top of Manchester City's Etihad Stadium poking out over the top, which we'll go check out in a bit. But as for these tower blocks, one block further down the road, named Nelson Court, in 2021 was seen to the death of a man in his 50s after police were called to reports of strong smelling fumes coming from the man's flat. A woman aged 24 would later be arrested on suspicion of murder. Now moving further down the canal and the surrounding estates, we'll have a look at what's going on around here. Again, you can see the mill further up in the backdrop. As you can see, this whole section has been modernised. The ducks seem to like it. A bit further down we have this memorial plaque for Dave Withers, tragically taken from us 5th of August 2013. And as we move further down the canal, you'll have to watch your head going under this bridge, and there's plenty of graffiti art on show. Just coming up onto street level now, taking a look at some of the shops. And around the corner here, we have two sets of shoes strung up over the telephone wire. Now this is usually seen in America to mark gang territory or drug spots, commemorating a death, losing a bet, or simply kids just messing about. As for here, I don't think we're in the hood. And have a look at one of the towers around here. Someone's gone and burnt the tinnies out as well. You'll near enough spot a tower in every direction you look. Moving on now over toward Bradford Road, which was seen to another stabbing incident. But first, here's a look at some of the local shops. And across the road here, you've got the parish church of the Apostles, with more sirens going off in the background. Moving further down the road, we have another fridge chilling in the garden, just missing the sofa to go with. Now this huge derelict building just up ahead is Brunswick Mill. Now Brunswick Mill is one of Manchester's most historic industrial buildings, a Grade 2 listed former cotton mill with roots going back to the 1830s. For many years it stood as a symbol of the city's industrial past, and more recently it became a creative hub where musicians, artists and grassroots groups used the space as rehearsal studios and meeting rooms. It even featured in music videos by well-known artists thanks to its raw and iconic backdrop. But over the past few years, the future of Brunswick Mill has shifted towards housing and regeneration. Planning permission was granted to redevelop the building and the surrounding site into residential property, and developers have now begun work to convert this historic structure into modern apartments. The current redevelopment, led by Arrowsmith Investments with construction by Big Red Construction, is transforming the mill into around 153 1 to 2 3-bedroom apartments, blending the building's industrial character with contemporary living spaces. The work also includes new build elements beside the mill to provide additional homes, with the first phase expected to be completed in the mid-2020s. This type of project is part of a wider trend across Manchester, where old mills and industrial buildings are being repurposed for modern use while preserving their historic fabric. It's controversial in some circles because it means long-standing cultural spaces are closing or relocating, but at the same time it's bringing investment and new residents into areas that once struggled with vacancy and decline. Today, Brunswick Mill is transitioning from a creative and industrial relic into a residential complex, keeping its heritage brickwork and presence on the skyline while serving a very different purpose on Manchester's growing population. And so, as I mentioned before, here on Bradford Road, one of the most serious violent incidents in the Miles Platting area in recent years happened on April 13th of this year, along by the Bradford Inn pub. Police were called to reports of a stabbing. The incident took place in a public area while people were still out in the early evening at around 10 to 7 at night. A 44-year-old man was left seriously injured and taken to hospital for treatment, and Greater Manchester Police quickly launched an investigation, and a suspect was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder in connection with the attack. Now, even further back in July of 2016, this same street was the scene to another stabbing incident in which a man ended up walking to North Manchester General Hospital with stab wounds, and two men aged 27 and 35 were then arrested on suspicion of assault in relation to the incident. Incidents like this highlight the kinds of violent crime that can happen in and around urban neighbourhoods, but it's also worth noting that this was a specific isolated event involving individuals in a particular situation rather than something happening across the entire community day to day. Police continue to work on tackling serious crime wherever it occurs, and investigations like this are part of those efforts to keep people safe. So just coming off Bradford Road near some of the estates, we have a mix of the Trinity Methodist Church and Coates and the Syncombe Church. We also have more shoes on the phone wire. Maybe this is the hood. Again, not looking in the best of conditions. Looks like the church here is surrounded by graffiti and tower blocks. And we do have this pretty nice art piece right on the side of Bradford Road, likely covering up the decaying wall behind it, which you can see on this side. This is how the wall actually looks without any art piece. Now, Miles Platting's reputation for crime comes from a long history of industrial decline, deprivation, and a handful of serious violent incidents that attracted a lot of attention over the years. While there have been tragic and high-profile crimes, including stabbings and other serious offences, these incidents don't tell the full story of everyday life here. Today, crime levels vary street by street. Some areas still struggle with antisocial behaviour and violence, while others are relatively quiet. Police and community groups are actively working to improve safety throughout targeted patrols, stop and search operations when needed, and long-term regeneration. So whilst Miles Platting isn't completely free of problems, it's also not the constant danger zone its reputation suggests. The reality in 2025 is far more mixed and complex. And now just to check out some more of the housing setups around here, again surrounded by the tower blocks. Looks like someone's left their ciggies in there. And here is a good look at some more of the regeneration work going on with the tower blocks that we talked about earlier. These two on the estate look to be under full maintenance. And just as we come to check out the other tower, we have a couple of sofa setups in the front garden again. Must be a trend around here. And so there is a good look at the amount of scaffolding set up around these blocks right now. Not the best of views. Just going down the alleyway here gives you a good look at this skyline. And now as we round up the video, I did say we would go check out the Man City Stadium, but along the way we aren't far from Strangeways Prison, which has plenty of stories of its own. Either way, here's a look outside for you. And so here, just opposite the Etihad Stadium, we have another estate, but this time with a memorial piece to brighten up the place, showing Pep Guardiola quoting a perfectionist, "That's part of my job." And there you can see just across the road there is the stadium itself. And now, just to wrap up the video here, is a look at the fairly new Co-op Arena and at the back of the Etihad Stadium. The Co-op Arena was constructed in 2024 and the Etihad Stadium built in 2002. You can see just how much money has gone into this spot. As for the housing estates around the area, not so much. As you get a look at the sites here, to summarise, how is Miles Platting today? The honest answer is that it's changing, but it's not perfect. There are still challenges here, crime hasn't disappeared, and some streets continue to struggle, but it's also not the constant danger zone many people imagine. Parts of the area are quieter than its reputation suggests. Regeneration is slowly reshaping the neighbourhood, and there's clear effort from police, the council and local communities to improve things. Miles Platting's past still influences how it's seen, but its future looks more mixed and more hopeful than many might expect.